King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. We're back at it with another Wrestling is Real podcast. KOP here with you, making changes, altering things, working on productions facilities here, working on a lot of different things to always continue to improve the program on a regular basis. So I had to go and get my hands on a new microphone stand to put this microphone on that I bought last year. Got video camera capabilities, got to go and get a ring light, a few other things. Maybe I'll do some video content. I already do video content, but just on a slate. Maybe I'll put myself back on camera to do YouTube content. You never know. But nevertheless, working on things over here to always improve the program, much like how WWE wants to go and improve themselves. A lot of things going on. I know Hell in a Cell's this weekend, kind of an afterthought when you think about everything else that's been going on. There's a lot to get into on the program. What I want to go ahead and focus on to start off, we got to talk about NXT and the turnaround of the product, where not so much a turnaround, what the WWE needs to do a turnaround of their product in general. That's what we need to go and talk about first and foremost, because they are going through a bunch of issues in that respect. So with that, NXT is setting the tone for an overall turnaround of the product, because now the live shows are coming up about a month from now as I record this program on the 16th of June. And then AEW is kind of ahead of the pack right now because they are preparing for a trip to New York. They announced they're going to be in Queens, where the site of the, if I'm correct, that's the site of the U.S. Open every year on Labor Day weekend. That's coming up really soon. And they're going to be there to do Dynamite Grand Slam, a live Dynamite broadcast from New York, or in the borough of Queens in New York City. They're going to be there, and it's quite a place to go and get started on. So there's that. Within NXT, we have the issue with all the changes that are going on. Samoa Joe now being brought back into the mix. All the factions, feuds, the frenzy they have going right now, and we'll go into what NXT is as a catalyst towards what the main roster is going to go through very soon. And then what Vince McMahon's planning to do, because the reports are he's starting to go ahead, and we're starting to hear rumblings of what the fans have been talking about for well over a year now, since the pandemic, and probably more than that. They're well aware they need to make some changes to their product. They didn't make one rule that I actually really did like, but there's a whole lot there. Plus, ticket sales are troubling. And I actually mentioned that over the weekend because the report came out over the weekend, but I haven't had a chance to talk about it here. We'll bring it up now. And we look at the spin that what the WWE is doing right now and how things are going still overall well, but they need to plan because everything's going well. But as we know with wrestling, if you make sure that everything might be going on an upturn, but when the product is bad, that's going to affect everything else. So they need to make sure that they're not losing out, and there's nothing that's going to be a roadblock or a speed bump that's going to get into the way, any obstacles that's going to preclude them from continuing to prosper and make progress of themselves in this big corporate entity that they are. So they're making a lot of changes. They're shoring things up. They're definitely trying to go more lean machine, and they realize changes that have to be made. And I don't know where those came from, but as I said, very aware. You have to take some credit where Nick Khan, his influence, and what he has brought to this company, it's apparent. It's apparent on Wall Street. It's apparent to media in general. And it's apparent now. It should be apparent to the fans because of what I see about in this program. You have to think about that. So there is good and bad going on, but we're going to go and focus on that. And then in the AEW, like I said, big feature story on Forbes on Tony Khan, which brought up the story about the new Dynamite. Well, actually, that brings up the Dynamite in New York. We're not going to bring that up yet, but there was some great, interesting information in the Forbes article, which it's titled, Meet All Elite Wrestling Tony Khan, the next Lord of the Ring. So a little bit of press. I'm not sure where the writer comes from and how he approached to put the story together, but we'll bring that up a little bit. And there's some interesting stories where they're about AEW and what they've been able to make off their deal with Warner Media and their deal on Dynamite. We'll talk about that. All here on the program. Hopefully get it all smacked in and squeezed in the next hour as we do this. Programming note, I'll be doing a post show for Hell in a Cell this weekend. We'll talk and do that coming up this Sunday. After the show comes off the air on Peacock, I'll go ahead and record something real quick, give you some comments on it, and bring that all up. We'll do that coming up this weekend. So make sure to look for that, wrestlingisreal.com, and check for the show and look for it when it comes and gets dropped down. Late Sunday night, early Monday morning, you'll find it there. Make sure to go and look out for that. A couple of things I want to bring up before we get into all that, because I want to try to go in order of how everything has happened. Over the weekend, we had Against All Odds from Impact Wrestling, and we had NXT TakeOver In Your House, which I did not do a post show for, and I was probably right for not doing one. I had thought about it, but I was like, no. Because of the fact that NXT, what they did was, it was really just a basic show of theirs. Pretty, it was a good stacked card, but no title changes. Nothing whatsoever really came out significant from the show. Except for the fact that Steven Regal was going to go ahead and find out what his future was going to be with NXT because of all the backstage brawling that was going on. So there was that. Now, that said, I watched the show, and it felt like it was a pretty... If you saw this takeover on TV, I wouldn't have been surprised if this would have been on TV, but they did that. Now, the $1 Million Championship, LA Knight beat Cameron Grimes, sure. But like I said, Karrion Kross in a 5-way retains. Raquel Gonzalez retains the NXT Women's title. Bronson Reed retains the North American Championship. MSK retains the Tag Team titles. That's it. I mean, don't get me wrong. The show is fine. Interesting with Xia Li and Mercedes Martinez and the Mei Ying character getting involved. Yeah. So that's fine. But it was kind of just a generic pedestrian show. It was a very good, normal NXT TakeOver episode. Nothing overly special compared to takeovers of past. I mean, I'm guessing where NXT is starting to get more specialty shows, where, Peacock, they're probably asking for more shows. We're getting a Great American Bash. Looks like NXT might be getting themselves into the monthly pay-per-view business. I don't know if that's a good idea, but that's what it feels like. Or they're doing specialty shows now. It's starting to get to that point. Okay, oh well. As for Impact Wrestling and Against All Odds, these shows that are not the main four, if it's not Rebellion, Hard to Kill, obviously is one of the bigger ones, Slammiversary or Bound for Glory, you're not expecting much to matter. They are the one night only pay-per-views. Pretty much the same thing. Now, they're a little bit splashier because it's for Impact Plus for what they're doing. They're trying to make sure that if you're paying $7.99 for their service, they're definitely giving you $7 pay-per-views. And that's what they did. I mean, it was good matches. Don't get me wrong. Sami Callihan, Tommy Dreamer over the Good Brothers in a street fight, which, it's what it was. Joe Doring over Satoshi Kojima, Petey Williams. No contest of the 5-way match for the X Division contendership to be number one contender for Impact X Division title. W. Morrissey strong over Rich Swann. Tenille Dashwood beating Jordan Grace, which is significant. Fire and Flavor over Kimberly and Susan to retain the Knockout Tag Team titles. Followed by Design, retain the Impact Tag Team titles. Deonna Purrazzo retains the Knockouts Championship. And Kenny Omega and Moose, that was the significant portion of the night. I think that the match that they gave us at Daly's Place, it was fine. Obviously, they didn't have that many people in the crowd. They didn't have the AEW crowd there, which was very significant. I think that was very important that they didn't have that crowd there. That it was just kept quiet. It was kind of in the dark. Because also, the match couldn't have gotten spoiled, really. At least as far as I know. I never saw any spoilers for that match at all. And, the show's taped just like another Impact Wrestling show. It's fine. It's good fodder to go and watch on a Saturday night. Whatever. if you got time to watch it, you're not going to miss it if you do. But if you have nothing else better to do, Impact Wrestling pay-per-view on a Saturday night, it's fine. I watch them. Kenny Omega winning over in a pinfall with the help of the Young Bucks. I mean, Moose looks strong throughout, and it's obvious that Kenny Omega is not going to be taken down by anybody right now. They're taking some time on him. And there was a report that came out that Kenny Omega and Roman Reigns are expected to be both looked at going forward to be baby faces down the line after a strong heel presence now as champions. And that's where they're trying to go with both characters in the respective promotions. I don't know if it makes much of a difference to me. But I am with other people where Kenny Omega hasn't gotten completely over with his character. Like the heel character's there because of the camaraderie, because of the entourage. But it's for him, his promos are fine. They're not over the top. His in-ring ability supersedes his promo ability. That's no question. And it's because I think where Don Callis coming in as the mouthpiece, Kenny needs to be speaking, doesn't have to say too much, but they do have him talk quite a bit. And I understand why. But if it was Kenny by himself, it would be tough. But Don Callis there, the entourage with him, makes him strong. Chicken should heel. It works. And he still has great matches. And I never got a really good chance to watch Kenny in New Japan or in any of his other routes beforehand. And it's too bad. But since I've been watching him, since back to Wrestle Kingdom, what was it, 8, I think it was? Not the one where he did Chris Jericho, the reason the AEW came to be. But before that, from what I learned about him, yeah, he was really good. And he's still, he's been solid. Been a mainstay right through for AEW. He's really one of their best wrestlers. I like his matches. I like how his interaction in the ring, his whole style. I like it. It works. It doesn't come all together with the promos, to me, at the least. But there's nobody that's playing. And if they're going to have something happen where Kenny eventually starts losing belts, something has to happen there. I still think, now, Moose actually just signed a new contract, so he's going to be destined to be a champion. He will be a world champion someday. I think sometime, if they're going to do a title change, it should be a Bound for Glory, not at Slammiversary. So the new plan will probably be Sami Callihan will get the chance to go after Kenny at Slammiversary. And then maybe down the line, you can do a 3-way where Sami, Moose, and Kenny are in the ring together. And that's how you drop the belt. Because I don't think they're going to let Kenny take a pin for the title. That's my guess. It's Impact Wrestling's not going to get the opportunity to have one of their stars pin Kenny Omega. I don't believe that's going to happen. I believe it'll be a 3-way, and you put Callahan and Moose against Kenny in a 3-way at Bound for Glory, and let Moose take the belt. And if you want, you can then transition to a feud with Moose and Sami if you did that down the line. I don't know, something. Because Sami hasn't been around the title picture for a while, but he's always good for wherever you want to put him in a title, in a feud for right now. He's good for wherever you need to put him in. He has been go-to. He's been a utility player. He's been very much what Eddie Edwards is. They're very much in the same vein, the way they both are. So I put down a couple of bullet points to talk about NXT from Tuesday night. And what I'm going to say is this. We all know what happened with Samoa Joe and William Regal last night. I said Steven Regal. Listen, I'm a WCW guy. I watched him as Lord Steven Regal for a long time. William Regal, I got it. It's been like that. But you know what? If it's a slip of the tongue, it's because I'm an old school guy in that case. All right? Just know. So William Regal, they put this storyline together, building it up. And NXT actually builds up storylines. They actually try to build up characters. They try to give some dimensions. NXT is the best effort of any of the 3 brands right now in the WWE to actually do something. And they're given the opportunity because of the fact that this show is on USA. It is a show that could potentially, because of what this is being built like, NXT, I don't feel like is a developmental territory anymore. There is a developmental system within where NXT is housed because of all the shows being done in Orlando, because it's attached to the Performance Center. But the Performance Center and who is churned out of the Performance Center to make it to NXT first, they're not going to get on TV like it was back in the day. It's obvious. Since the move to USA Network, the stars that are going to be allowed to make it to television are going to be established stars, or going to be people that are established in the, at least of the internet wrestling community. Anybody brand new, it's going to take some time for them to go and be put up to that main to the NXT roster, not the main roster, the NXT roster. And that's what it comes down to. NXT and Triple H, he's doing something where he is playing a little bit from the playbook that he got to be a part of as an in-ring performer in the Attitude Era or the Monday Night Wars, where you had to have some overarching storyline, whether it be a faction, whether it be a leadership, something like that. As we know, WCW, NWO was there for a long time. Then it was the Vince Russo and the Powers That Be with Creative Control. Then it was the Millionaires Club versus the New Blood, all of that. And then on the WWF side, you had Vince McMahon as the evil Vince, Mr. McMahon, dealing with Stone Cold, or was the corporation. That's what you had overall there. And the McMahon family always being embedded, overarching storylines across the board. And that was indicative of what was always going on. In this case now, William Regal has kind of been a little bit of that, but has always been a little bit hands off a little bit. But now they have elevated his presence and storyline here, because William Regal always is the one that has to announce the big matches. He's played the Jack Tunney commissioner role somewhat now for a while, because, you know, his role has been pulled back. Like, he's definitely there. He had to go and deal with people going in to go and visit him in the office and things like that, or confronting him out in the ring, things like that. But now, the Samoa Joe angle, bringing in Samoa Joe as the enforcer, it kind of reminds me of TNA and Impact when they had Jim Cornette running the show and Matt Morgan was his enforcer, in the same vein. But Samoa Joe, I mean, he's 42 years old. He could definitely still go out and wrestle. But he doesn't need to go and wrestle the full time right now. Plus, he's had his share of injuries coming in the WWE anyway in that full schedule. So he was effective. He's been effective in several roles so far. When they put him out there, you know, whether it's panels, you know, doing pay-per-view stuff, or Raw Talk, SmackDown, whatever, Talking Smack, or he's on commentary doing Raw, he's been effective. He's all around. So to bring him back, as they did where the report is Triple H supposedly wanted to bring him back and then put him into this role in NXT, it's nice to see that Triple H has a little bit of autonomy on this, that he's able to do something about this. So he was able to go and call the audible, get Joe back for this role, which Joe is going to be very effective in. He's already effective now. They have a pretty specific storyline in place. And now you have this overarching thing with Samoa Joe now infiltrated, embedded into the storyline on NXT, wherever you want him. Embedded with Karrion Kross and Adam Cole. He can be part of anything that's going on in NXT, the way they have it set up, which works. So the general manager enforcer interaction is an Attitude Era style storyline. It's not exactly the same that we've seen before, but we've seen this kind of thing before, where an overarching storyline, which keeps people embedded to what's going to happen in all the different feuds, factions, and the type of frenzy that's going to be going on. We now see all that being played out. And this helps to get a little bit of buzz to the product, because then the diehard fans are now flocking to NXT to see what Samoa Joe is going to be embedded with right now, interacting with some of the stars. And NXT is working on trying to do a number of things to build interest. They have a number of storylines that are going on, regardless of the feuds that they have. So it's Raquel Gonzalez, All the title pictures. There's that. Karrion Kross, unstoppable heel champion right now. And now Adam Cole apparently is going to be the guy that's going to get a chance to go and crack at him coming up down the line. Maybe SummerSlam, the weekend before SummerSlam, something like that, another takeover. Who knows? The Diamond Mine's going to debut next week. We don't know what that's going to be yet. It could be a Raw Underground type feel, another MMA type of thing to it. But it's Triple H is doing this here. What is this going to be? Then you have the $1 million title, which I must admit, it's getting over. It is an old school storyline brought back to life. Nostalgia with Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, $1 Million belt, instantly putting together the lavish, rich, overbearing characters in Cameron Grimes and LA Knight, both in the same kind of, characters leading up to their match. And yes, you could have seen the LA Knight heel turn a mile away, which I did. As soon as he led into, I got everything I wanted, it was there. You could just see it was coming. It's the right move for LA Knight. Now LA Knight gets a chance to ride. The crowd responded very well to seeing LA Knight take out Ted DiBiase, control the belt. Cameron Grimes comes in for the save. This is a good babyface heel feud. Old school. Old school as you can get. It works. It almost has like a Von Erich versus Devastation Incorporated type storyline. It's something like that. It has that kind of, it's like almost like a little bit of a world class kind of championship wrestling kind of feel to it. Wonderful. So they're doing a lot of things there that should help the overall, because the characters themselves are not that well defined. And what I'm saying is, look, they got good wrestlers here. But for me to get emotionally invested, I've been listening to Busted Open now for the last week or so, a little more intensely. Not their show on SiriusXM, because I'm not going to pay for the paywall. But I've listened to the podcast and some clips here and there. The emotional investment, you're getting a little more of that now with NXT, where you could do that with, this is where Bully Ray said the thing, where, William Regal, he gets you emotionally invested. I think now I'm emotionally invested now in the $1 Million belt thing with LA Knight and Cameron Grimes. I'm in it now. I kind of marked out that a heel turn. I liked it. And I thought Cameron Grimes coming in, wonderful. That's positive. And that is more than I can say for the main roster. With the one exception to me is the Roman Reigns and the Usos, which, you could give them as much time as you want. I'm paying attention. Roman Reigns and the Usos, fantastic. And Roman Reigns mouthing off, getting hot, sounding like The Rock, sounding like his cousin. Good stuff. Usos, Jimmy and Jay, and the whole dynamic family triangle here is good stuff. Really enjoying it. But NXT is right now, for what the company right now, for WWE as a whole, NXT is getting itself some momentum. And I think this is what has to do with not having the counter program against AEW. NXT is now trying to carve its own path. It still needs work because you have a lot of characters that kind of feel the same. There's not a lot of difference between certain stars. There is the dark, deep, brooding characters, the same kind of ruthless aggression kind of feel. They need a little more change up of who's what, especially when you're also in that dark atmosphere. There's not a whole lot of brightness in there. And a whole lot of, not cartoony, but they're obviously going with real characters more or less. And what they're doing, they're trying to work things out. And they obviously have their stars they're going to work off of now that are a lot of well-known, visible free agents that they've had out there that are now on the main roster that are working their way through with Frankie Monet or Taya Valkyrie. with all the former Ring of Honor stars, among others, they have a lot of things going in a good direction. They got a good roster. You really can't go wrong. But I think the other thing too is that with some of these NXT stars, they really are not. They're not being pushed to go ahead and go beyond what the character can do. Amplify it, maybe. Maybe they're not amplified so much. If there's a couple of people that are definitely amplifying their characters, I think Adam Cole's hitting a fever pitch right now. He's doing. I feel like he's finally ready to go ahead and break out of the mold and be something more than just be head of a faction or just be a good talker and good worker. That maybe he could be put into something more. Everybody knows we could feel like there's something more with Adam Cole, but there is a ceiling on him because of his size. We know that. And only a certain amount of people get to be that Shawn Michaels or Daniel Bryan mold or Rey Mysterio. There's only a few people allowed to have that spot. Can Adam Cole fill that spot? Can he be somebody that crosses over, much like how AJ Styles was able to go and make it through the mold, break the mold and get past all of that? That's tough to break. And so Adam Cole's working on a ceiling right now. He's trying to break. He's trying to crack it. This glass ceiling that's going on there. Karrion Kross is a star all over. There just is. Him and Scarlett, the package is perfect. And it's fine for him to be right now the dominant champion in NXT. Is where he should be. And he needs to stay like that for a little bit longer. But eventually, if there's anyone that needs to be brought up and called up in the future, you need to look at Karrion Kross and Adam Cole. Definitely Karrion Kross. I don't know what you do to get him to break out and how they will book him correctly, because we know the main roster likes to tinker. Stars that were so strong, and then how they're booked after the fact. When we look at Asuka, Rhea Ripley, Shayna Baszler on the women's side. Look at Aleister Black, Ricochet, Cedric, not Cedric Alexander, because he was already kind of a main roster. You look at some of the stars they bring up and what they do with them. Elias would be another example. What they do to bring them up to the main roster and how they're positioned. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you're Riddle. Okay? But there's a lot that has to be said right there. Plus, the other thing, too, that NXT does is that they do book properly their shows. They're doing what AEW does. They're actually booking shows where you're going to have matches leading up to the next week. You have things to look forward to the next week's show. You get cliffhangers. You get all that. They're still consistent on that part for the most part. So NXT is the format by which WWE has strived, has done well with. Right? Yeah, you might get some of the same stars there every week now because the roster's kind of a little bit narrowed. And they're only going to work with certain stars they can that they know they've already gotten much training and have had a lot of time in ring, in front of crowds. They're able to go and mold right into the picture and they're TV ready more or less. But when you have a lot of their stars, they're not ready to get up there yet, and they have no live crowds to go and play in front of to go ahead and kind of screw up and kind of learn the ropes, which is what they need those Florida house shows to start getting back up. And now that Florida's back up, and now that NXT, or at least with WWE going back on the house shows, will NXT get back on the road again? Will they start getting their crowds again? Will they start getting a chance to go and do some house shows to get some of these other stars that are not so known, get back on the road to Fort Pierce, get back on the road to Tampa, Orlando, Fort Pierce, West Palm, Miami, whatever, get back on the road and get noticed again. Get to do those small shows like they used to before. They need to get back to that. And eventually they're going to have to get back to that because that'll work out for them. And then they can see some of the stars that they're building on that are their truly developmental end, because NXT will still be the brand name for the developmental, but we know the TV show is not developmental. It is not the same show that was on WWE Network a couple of years back. Not at all. And for the credit of WWE, they did get this show at the level now where NXT is now a strong standalone. The only thing is the ratings don't reflect it. I mean, in the Go Home show to Take Over in Your House only got up to 680 something thousand. They're staying around the 700,000 mark. They have to grow off of that. They have the star power to it. Can they get the show to a point where there's going to be storylines that will compel new viewers, that'll get people in here emotionally invested to have to watch the show live? Can they do that? That is part of what's going on with NXT right now, which is what the main roster has to do as well. But NXT clearly identifying a standalone brand, the storyline they have with Samoa Joe and William Regal, is indicative, with highly sought free agents from the indie circuit being the only ones seeing possible spots on TV. That's what I see about NXT overall. And that's the catalyst. That is the format. That is the protocol that the main roster needs to implement. They need to go back to what they had done, not so much when they've gotten changes. Now, changes have to come in anyway because of the live shows. July 16th is your target date. And there's a bunch of things that are going with that are going to keep people noticing. So first of all, let's bring up the main thing that's coming out for here over the weekend. So there's been different reports. Number one was a report that came from Dave Meltzer over the weekend about how AEW was outselling WWE in their particular live ticket shows, their live ticket sales. So we take that over the weekend. AEW tickets are selling better than WWE in some cities. And Meltzer said this, quote, "They're bad. People aren't buying tickets. It's a message." Then he says this, quote, "They're behind AEW in ticket sales as far as per show thing. They've had a very good first week. Houston for July 16th with Edge at his first night back out came out very strong. Fort Worth and the pay-per-view is almost sold out. They're going to have 10,000 people in there. That's good. Dallas I thought was weak, but now I don't think it's weak anymore compared to anything else. The only one good is there's a Raw in Chicago at Allstate Arena. That's probably around 6,300 sold, which will be well below what I would expect, but I would not call it bad this far in advance. Most of the rest of the stuff is not okay. A lot of under 2,000 tickets sold at a lot of shows they still have left that they're putting out on their tour. 25 city tours, as a matter of fact. Meanwhile, when it comes to head-to-head with AEW, they're both running Dallas, and WWE is ahead, big, but they're also playing at the American Airlines Arena, bigger arena, and AEW is working in Garland, Texas, suburban Dallas, at the Curtis Caldwell Center. It's a much smaller venue. Where AEW continues to run the smaller venues, they're not running big arenas that are 10, 15,000 seats, not unless it's a big pay-per-view. Ticket sales in Jacksonville are better for AEW than WWE, but that's expected because of AEW's home base. When it comes to Miami, AEW is ahead. Charlotte, AEW is ahead. Charlotte's a big surprise because in those Carolina markets, the WWE is typically way ahead in the interest in those Carolina markets and all the traditional wrestling matches. AEW is stronger in what's not traditional wrestling markets. They both put tickets on for sale in Charlotte. AEW is in the B building. WWE is in the big building, and AEW is ahead in ticket sales. In Miami, neither side is doing good, but the ticket sales for WWE are not good at all. AEWs are okay in Miami. That's the barometer on when you're really hot and cold, and WWE is cold. So that's concerning. Very concerning. Now, the other way around, Stephanie McMahon actually went on to Yahoo Finance and turned things around and tried to put a spin on what was going on with that. I'll bring that up real quick. She says that there was some strong ticket sales. I watched the interviews she did with Yahoo Finance. She's so polished when he does these interviews. These professional corporate type interviews, she is just money. She's really good. Learned a lot from the family. So she said flat out, ticket sales looking great. We've seen excellent results so far. We're definitely tracking way ahead of where we were the last time when we were in market for these events. And in the story from Yahoo Finance, they mentioned the fundamentals are strong because despite the impact on the live events business, which hauled $144.2 million in sales alone in 2018, according to the regulatory filings. The stock continues to be bullish. Over the past year to year, shares have gone up 33%. It's right now near $60 a share at the moment. And we know analysts have praised the company for securing the lucrative long-term media rights with Fox and Comcast. Then they had the restructuring of key departments. We've talked about that on the show. The talent roster, likely to bolster profits. And McMahon said the restructuring reflects the desire to run a more efficient, better business coming out of the pandemic. Quote, we continue to believe the company's fundamentals are strong with several key potential catalysts ahead. WWE successfully navigated the pandemic, demonstrating the flexibility and resilience of its business model. Content was delivered to partners continuously. Cost mitigation measures more than offset parts of the business that saw revenue pressure. And FCF generation was strong for $292 million for 2020. FCF generation stands for free cash flow, just so you know. So they're still feeling good. And by the way, one of the analysts for Guggenheim, so there's actually a target for those that might be looking at the stock price, that one of the major institutional investing analysts is saying that while the price is now just a little shy under $60 a share, he says it's a buy and a price target is suspected of $75. If you want to go ahead and put a couple thousand down, a little more than that on WWE and maybe ride it up $15 as it comes and gets the shares up, we can see what happens. The analyst also said here, Curry Baker says that the company's returned to live in July. They expect full capacity sellouts for the first 3 shows in Texas, thus normalizing the core product and providing an incremental boost to ratings, which he says we saw last year when WWE went to the Thunderdome format. Overall, people are going to really get back into things when the live shows are back. That's going to definitely help a lot. So we got one more month. But what does this company need to do to prepare for that? Because they have to change what's not working right now in the Thunderdome format. Well, for that, we should go ahead and talk about what's being discussed now. Andrew Zarian from the McMahon Pro Wrestling Podcast said he's been hearing exciting stuff on the horizon. But he said, quote, hearing a lot of exciting stuff on the side of pro wrestling. Too early to post anything, but honestly, I'm very hopeful we will see a quality turnaround by the end of the year. WrestlingNews.co did try to go and get some feelers and try to get some questions answered about this Andrew Zarian tweet that came out over this week. And WrestlingNews.co says that Vince McMahon is definitely aware that the product is stale. And the feeling among people in management has been that the good stuff in regards to creative is being saved for the live crowds. And there's been reports that John Cena is expected to be back next month to set up a big match for SummerSlam, and talks for The Rock to hopefully come for Survivor Series, but it sounds like big structural creative changes are on the horizon. Also, we're hearing in the same vein, it's that there are long-term plans for Roman Reigns in a stable. And that there are plans that are laid out for months in advance with a rough idea on plans for next year, including WrestleMania, which is also promising news. Dave Meltzer on Sunday on Wrestling Observer Radio discussed the plans are for Kenny Omega and Roman Reigns, but with Omega, he's giving fans exciting TV matches every time. With Reigns on SmackDown, he dominates everyone. This week, defeating Rey and Dominic Mysterio, even though Reigns is set to defend Universal title at Hell in a Cell against Rey Mysterio Jr. Creature habit. Meltzer said, quote, in time, Kenny Omega is doing this heel turn to come back and be a big baby face. Whenever that will be in a year or whatever, with Kenny hurting, I don't know when that will be. Roman Reigns and Kenny Omega are essentially the same character in the sense that they are heels who are being groomed to be the top babyface star down the line of the promotion. AEW is trying to book it a way to make the matches exciting, and WWE is trying to book Roman Reigns and tell you, it doesn't matter, he's going to kill the guy. WrestlingNews.co said that a WWE source told them, quote, Vince doesn't want to portray Roman as a cowardly heel who gets his ass kicked 50% of the time. He's the guy who will carry the company for the next few years, and Vince sees him as his top priority, protect Roman at all costs. Well, when you finally got things right, and we said, oh my God, how many times on this program in 2014, in 2015, 2016, did we see a heel turn needed to happen to get Roman Reigns out of the funk? Well, he is the ultimate heel. And even before then, Roman Reigns had become a star. The leukemia scare and his comeback, man, that was a boost. That got him as such a face. Because the thing is, it's unfortunate all that happening to him. But Roman Reigns coming back, becoming such a major babyface, a really lovable babyface, then going heel. So he didn't have to go and be this face that was being pushed down our throats, forced a heel turn. It was actually on his terms to go heel. And it's been so good. It has been so good. He will be an amazing babyface, and he will roll this company. He will be the predecessor to John Cena. I believe that. He is now. But once they get him back there, he will be back to being the top babyface, and they'll finally have one. And I just want and hope that Roman Reigns doesn't lose this edge when he becomes a face. Whenever that is. No hurry on that at all. I don't need it anyway. No plans on that. So as we said, I just said before, Vince McMahon is aware the product is stale. That's what the report that's out there now. And one of the things that has been mentioned now, which is very interesting, which I think is fantastic. A major change I actually talked about on TikTok a few weeks ago. It's like somebody answer my prayer. Now, first of all, we had somebody come on. There was some talk out there about how Vince McMahon now instituting a new rule for all TV matches. Before I get to that, I want to get into what Bleacher Report reported. Eric Beeston at Bleacher Report mentioned stop repeating matches every single week. And he prefaces and gives, examples over and over. Shinsuke Nakamura taking on King Corbin for the fourth time in 5 weeks. Asuka and Rhea Ripley taking on each other at least 4 times since night 2 of WrestleMania 37 on April 11th. Cedric Alexander battling Shelton Benjamin 3 out of 4 weeks on the flagship on Raw. All those examples. And he writes here, quote, for whatever reason, the head honchos at WWE and creative geniuses either think fans' attention spans are so short they won't remember watching the same match multiple weeks in a row, or they think fans enjoy being bludgeoned with the same thing every week. Paul Davis at WrestlingNews.co says that Vince is aware of this being stale. And here's one of the biggest things that was being said that really gives me hope. If they institute it. Vince McMahon has decreed a new rule be imposed on each and every match shown on television. According to Ringside News, Mr. McMahon has issued a ban on all cold matches. Every single match now needs to have a reason for being. Thank you. That's one of the easiest things to change right now. Nothing will occur for the sake of seeing 2 wrestlers compete head-to-head. This new ruling explains why Jeff Hardy's career was suddenly on the line in his match with Cedric Alexander. The Ringside News source specified that the point behind the matches should all form part of a larger storyline. But they have to stick to this rule. If this is the case, every single match now needs to have a reason for being. We need to start seeing matches being planned out ahead. Don't instantly gratify this audience with a match. Now we are programmed to it. It was fine when it happened once in a while, but when it's every match now, Insta-feud, it's done. You've run that into the ground. You have beaten that horse bloody. The carcass is not even noticeable anymore. It's enough. This is where they need to go and change all that. When you go into Hell in a Cell this weekend and you see the matches are going to have to get set up, and you know that the matches they put together are based on feuds that we have seen over and over and over exposed. We've seen the same people in the ring together over and over and over. Well, that's one thing. Then you have to be able to let other stars come into play. That's the other thing that's got to be considered as well. So that's what I had on WWE, except for one more thing I want to bring up. I thought it was actually important. Now, some of you that might have bought the shares of WWE stock, you might have been a shareholder at some point, like I was. I was for a few months. When I started losing money, I dropped out. Well, this just got through the wire on the dirt sheets through 411 Mania, but I already knew about this last week because I got a letter from some tort law firm that we reached out to me. So Vince McMahon or more are sued for selling WWE stock while not disclosing Middle East TV deal issues. So there was a lawsuit that was filed against McMahon's, Triple H, former Presidents George Barris and Michelle D. Wilson, and more of our allegations they sold over $300 million of stock and inflated prices while telling investors a renewal of their agreement with Riyadh's Orbit Showcase Network was imminent. Saudi Arabia, by the way. The issue is that OSN left the sports broadcasting field. The lawsuit claims that WWE knew it was happening and that they misled the investors about how likely they were to find a replacement broadcasting deal once their deal was done. And by that time, Vince McMahon sold 3.5 million shares with over $280 million, which the lawsuit alleges was done on, quote, non-public information regarding the company's key contracts, business metrics, and financial prospects in the Middle East. So, that said, here's what happened. That the stock, which I bought in kind of around the $60 mark, it dropped from $62 to $44.50. So, let's go back to 2019. And I was in their stock. And so now I'm a complainant in the lawsuit. I got to be a part of the lawsuit, so I'm going to probably get some kind of a settlement for it. There you go. Interesting. So we'll keep that there. See what happens with that. I'll keep you updated and let you know if anything happens. So let's quickly talk about Hell in a Cell while I'm at it. 5 matches scheduled for so far that have been announced, which I really don't think anybody's going to lose any titles this weekend. We know of 4 title matches in the card, and Alexa Bliss versus Shayna Baszler. So I think Alexa Bliss wins over Shayna Baszler. Bianca Belair will retain the SmackDown Women's title. I think Rhea Ripley will retain the Raw Women's title. I think Bobby Lashley will retain the WWE Championship in Hell in a Cell. And the Universal title, Roman Reigns will win and retain over Rey Mysterio. That's where I think things are at. Pretty simple there. So a couple things with AEW that I should bring up before we wrap things up. So they're going to be at Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York, which is where normally the U.S. Open is held. Now, specifically, it's going to be at the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center. Tickets go on sale Friday, July 16th, 10 a.m. And so it's really good for them. That's all said and done for them. It's Wednesday, September 22nd, they'll be in Queens, New York. Looking forward to that. Big deal for them to be in New York City. An interesting choice to go and work in Queens at this stadium instead of any of the arenas that are around, but in very familiar territory for WWE. And from what I saw in an announcement that Tony Khan made, he had planned to go and do this beforehand, but didn't get to happen because of what happened with what was going on with their shows, with the pandemic. It was a plan to come to New York, but didn't get a chance to be until now. Now, Hank Tucker of Forbes did the story I told you about. That's a feature on Tony Khan. Wrote an article about AEW and noted that the promotion got $43.75 million from Warner Media in 2020. The company is still in the red right now, but they're invested 8 figures in the video game department. They released their casino mobile game, also working on Elite GM, another mobile game, and a major console game. And All Elite Wrestling did ink a $175 million extension with Warner Media in January 2020, which will last through 2023. So they're making some money. They have not turned around a profit yet, but they're working on it. Let's go and quickly get into the story of what Tony Khan said when he was featured by Hank Tucker and Forbes.com. This story just came out yesterday. So he starts off in the subheading that the 38-year-old CEO has built the first real threat to Vince McMahon's WWE in more than 2 decades. And that's talking about the billionaire versus billionaire showdown. So this Hank Tucker fellow, he's obviously trying to go ahead and build up another feeling of where wrestling becomes something legitimate again because we get another battle. It'll be interesting. Now, Hank obviously knows what he's talking about here. This report is pretty comprehensive. Let me just take some comments. I'm just to pull a couple of things that he said. So Nick writes here, the pro wrestling business, of course, quote, was built in such mock machismo, but Khan has shed away from actively trash-talking the competition since launching AEW in 2019. Perhaps because of his babyface personality, his tone in the video, when he talked about the supposed WWE talking to New Japan Pro Wrestling, it came more tongue-in-cheek than pile driver. After 2 years of modest growth, AEW is still experiencing early growing pains while trying to avoid the grim fate of everyone else who has dared to challenge Vince McMahon's WWE over the past 4 decades, but has already made a big impact on professional wrestling. So AEW was started with a major investment from his father, billionaire Jacksonville Jaguars owner Shahid Khan, with up to $100 million. Its first 3 months on TNT were successful enough to secure the extension for Wednesday Night Dynamite to be on Warner Media, which will be from TNT to TBS next year. And Dynamite was a title he picked a quarter century ago when he sketched out episodes in his junior high notebook. The 2-hour program is shook in pro wrestling's power structure by going head-to-head and beating McMahon's WWE, which he's not saying NXT, but this is obviously a story to look good for Tony Khan. This also makes him look good in the press for AEW, even though it's a private company, but obviously for sponsors to look at and for other media entities to look at as well. Now, Tony Khan says, quote, I don't want to be the next blank wrestling company of the past. Fill in the blank. We love wrestling of the past, wrestling of the present, and wrestling of the future. That's what gives us a great chance to retain and gain audience share. Interesting part, Khan was born in 1982, the same year McMahon bought out his father's stake in what was then the World Wrestling Federation. I didn't realize that Shahid Khan actually a little bit in the wrestling business in his first place. And Tony Khan also mentioned about the Monday Night Wars and WCW's downfall. That I'm glad, quote, WCW failed because it created a vacancy for us to come in and succeed. But it made a fairly bleak period for the wrestling business. He's not wrong on that point. Because WCW was such a major entity that there was no other company that could come in and actually compete like that. And most likely the talent would have not been available for an AEW to go ahead and acquire talent to bring on board as they do now. More from Nick Tucker here. Khan watched and learned from every wrestling operation McMahon conquered, and his father encouraged a passion, even if he didn't quite understand it. Shahid Khan's first investment in his son's obsession was a father-son trip to a grungy Philadelphia arena in August 1986 for ECW. It was 13-year-old Khan's reward for agreeing to take the entrance exam and enroll in the University of Illinois Laboratory High School. He would still keep watching while he went to the University of Illinois, worked at a biofuels company, biding his time as his father pursued his own dream of NFL ownership. He bought the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2012 and trusted Tony to start the franchise's analytics department, gave him a similar role with his English soccer club, Fulham, in 2015. And then he mentioned how he got the idea of going for AEW in 2018, putting it together. Now, there are some comments that have been made by Warner Media, which is also very important because they got some comments set. Brett White, general manager of TNT, TBS, and True TV. Remember Kevin Rowley being let go because of all the things that were going on with Warner Media, Kevin Riley was definitely one of the people that were really standing up for AEW when they brought him in. Well, Brett White's here, general manager TNT TV as a True TV. Definitely important to know. For someone to have the audacity, quote, to say, I'm going to take on the biggest wrestling league in the world and see if I can be a challenger brand, it takes chutzpah. And he nailed it. So there is faith that AEW has with Warner Media, with their broadcast partners. They have it. Now, let's look at the real difference. The $43.75 million AEW received at TNT last year made it the largest share of its revenue. But that's a rounding error compared to WWE's record $974 million of revenue in 2020, pandemic era, for both of them. To think that wrestling is a $1 billion business, an industry is a $1 billion business, that's huge. That's significant across the board. That's why this is so real. Still, AEW's pay-per-view numbers and ticket sales are growing. The new show they're going to be adding to its coffers with AEW Rampage coming on August 13th. And Khan expects his wrestling division to be profitable this year, though an 8-figure investment in video game development will keep the company in the red for now. Now, he writes in here, Hank Tucker, that the first counterattack by WWE when Dynamite debuted, before it debuted, was moving NXT from WWE Network to USA Network in the fall of 2019. But losing the Wednesday ratings battle, NXT retreated to Tuesdays, April 2021. Since then, Dynamite has almost averaged 1 million viewers, or about what WWE gets for its flagship Monday Night show, Monday Night Raw. But we can variate what that loss really means, just to say that point. A choice quote from Tony Khan to close out this article, quote, "There's no reason why there only needs to be one wrestling company. The wrestling business is hotter now than it's been in a long time." And with that, I agree. Very important how things are going right now. Significant. I'm very happy with where the wrestling is right now. Since I started this program, it's in a much better place. Can WWE right now make the proper changes they need to lead up to live events? AEW has the momentum. And I said this on TikTok. AEW has the momentum right now. What WWE has right now is a lack of fan motivation. Fans will be motivated to get back to this product pretty quickly. You're going to get your core audience back on board, and you might get some mainstream fans to come on back and actually watch the show again. Which is why I continue to say it's very important that all the other wrestling promotions succeed based on the success that WWE has laid out. It needs to happen. We all should hope that it happens. And we'll leave it there. This weekend, Hell in a Cell coming up. We'll talk about that. This weekend, we will do a post show right here at WrestlingIsReal.com. Look out for that. And until this weekend, after we watch Hell in a Cell, enjoy it. Come back for another Wrestling Is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Thank you for listening to the Wrestling Is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at WrestlingIsReal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.